High-end clients often have very specific and high expectations. How do you ensure that your projects not only meet but exceed these expectations?
Look, I always say it's a champagne taste beer budget, what people want and what they can afford. It's pretty frustrating, to be honest. But I think what we try to do from a client perspective, it's not always just so focused on the actual product. It's also the service that you give somebody. So actually valuing them as a customer. So if I had a cafe and you came and bought a coffee every day, I would appreciate that and value that and say hi to you and I'd make sure that you knew your order. And I think sometimes people, I mentioned that with mentoring, can be too transactional. So they look at the purchaser on a development as just, a name, a price, and that's it. But really having a relationship somewhat with them, particularly on smaller projects, can be very valuable because you build that rapport and again, you can service them. So again, the product is one thing, right? You can't change that. You can't change the develop the location, you can tinker around the edges, and that's fine. That's part of servicing the client. Do you want to make some changes? Let's work together. But it's doing that in the right manner where you're not like almost adverse to each other and it's always combative. So, if anything, we probably lean into it a bit and sort of say, hey, we really appreciate your business. What can we do? Let's go on this journey together. Let's give you updates as we go, as opposed to some that are like, never spoke to him, and 2 years later, give him the money. I think there's got to be a little bit more service for the process, and I found that a lot of people do appreciate it because the last thing you want them to do is sort of wondering what's happening, because sometimes things are happening, but not necessarily visible on site, and some things, an example, we waited 4 months for endorsed plans on a recent project. We're communicating on it. That's not blaming council, but that's why we haven't started because we legally can't because we can't get a building permit. And people are okay, they get it. It's just about giving that service and communication. So, that keeps the expectations of they're high and it brings them down because they stop stressing.
Yeah, it's always keep them in the loop. Sometimes it's all about building that
Yeah.
stakeholder relationship. How do you manage that in a better way? Yeah.
Mm.
Looking ahead, what is your long-term vision for Samuel Property? And how do you see the company evolving over the next decade?
Yeah, well, I've already sort of started to sort of put that process into play. But if I look back, um, you know, 5 to 10 years ago, a lot of the projects that we were doing were probably anywhere between 20 and $40 million in value. And we might have had between 4 to 8 projects on at once, which at the time was like, well, crazy. Now, as I sort of look at some of the current projects that we have and what we're looking at going forward, it's probably more of the mindset of 3 to 4 projects at once, but the values are probably more like 75 to 125 mil each. So, if we end up with 4 of the top end, then that's $500 million of development at once. And I see that as significant, but at the same time, manageable. My team is myself and 2 others. So that's sort of what I'm looking to do is to keep a small team that's heavily and highly focused on a few, a small handful of projects that we passionately care about. I think, sometimes all my metaphors are a bit crude, but there's a reason why people don't have 8 kids, right? It's probably pretty hard to do. You want to love them all the same and give them all the same attention. I found with 8 projects that it was really hard to do that. Some days you care about others more than others, and that's not okay. All right. So, if we had 3 or 4, I think that would really push me right to the edge, but still allow me to give the correct focus and time. And obviously at the right size where, if things got a little bit tighter at any set, there's enough meat on the bone, whereby, we're not in a situation when all of a sudden the project doesn't work. We can always work through and tinker it. So, yeah, that's what we're looking at. We've got a couple on the go at the moment that are in that price range and then looking ahead for more opportunities.